A day after the downing of flight MH17, the questions are mounting. Chief among them, who could have shot this plane down and how? Well, Roebrt Wall, our senior aerospace reporter, is joining me to tell us what we know so far, really. And Robert, what do we know about the weapon that was used to shoot down the plane so far?
What we know is it has to be, or it's likely, a quite sophisticated piece of equipment. If you consider where that airplane was flying, the Boeing 777 was above 30,000 feet, and that is an altitude you can't just reach with any old weapon. So this was probably a quite sophisticated piece of equipment.
And how common are threats to airlines from this kind of weapon? I mean, how worried has the industry been about this kind of weapon causing this kind of disaster?
Yeah, that's very interesting actually, because the industry has worried about attacks from ground-fired missiles before. But it's been a different type of threat, to be quite honest. It's been a much less sophisticated system. There's these missiles out there, we call them man-pads. They're shoulder-fired, heat-seeking weapons. They're quite widely available. And there have been attacks with these weapons on aircraft. So that has really been what the industry is worried about. What's very different in this case is the airplanes was flying so high, it was a much more sophisticated system, something you really associate with government and military use.
So you'd need a lot of expertise to operate one of these systems, would you? I mean, it's not just pressing a button.
Correct. The man-pads I was talking about earlier, that's fairly simple. I mean, one of the reasons the US used them or gave them to the rebels in Afghanistan when they were fighting the Soviet Union was they could just pick it up and fire, pretty much. This is very different. You usually need to have some expertise with radar systems because you want to watch the target. Right. And yes, you're absolutely right. You need to have some training.
What will the authorities now be doing, the US authorities in particular, to find out more about where this missile was fired from and who was firing it? What can they do to trace that from the information they have so far?
Well, the Pentagon has various tools to try to figure out what has happened. And one can only surmise, they haven't really said yet, that this is what they've already relied on to come out so forcefully. The options are across the board. There are what we call signals intelligence systems, things that pick up radar and can tell you what's going on. Obviously there's communications intercepts, which we all now know about.
Yep.
There's satellites that can see a missile plume and can follow it. So there's various ways to do this, and presumably beyond what they had initially, they're now taking it all together and seeing what they can make of it.
Is it possible to estimate how long that process might take?
No, to be quite honest,
Right.
It's not. And the other question is, will they ever tell us?
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much, Robert, for that insight.
Sure.